Hello, everyone. This is Liz from Tuition Exchange Central. Thank you for joining me today to review the TE Easy application process. Today, we will review the 2 steps in the process to apply for tuition exchange. The first step is for the student to create a TE Easy application account. It's important to keep in mind when the student is applying for tuition exchange that the TE Easy application is all about the student. The student will need to have an email account outside of their high school or college email address. So they should consider creating a commercial email account if they do not have one, perhaps a Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail account, and they should ensure that that email address is professional. It is very important that when the student is creating their TE Easy application student account, that they are not using their parents' personal email address or their parents' work email address to create the account. Also important that if the student applying for tuition exchange also happens to be the eligible employee, it's important that the student use a different email account than their institutional or work email account. So again, the student is creating an account before they apply for tuition exchange, and they will need to have their own personal email address that will stay with them throughout their educational journey in order to create that account. Students typically only complete the TE Easy application when they are first applying for tuition exchange. There are a few exceptions to that. For example, if the student later decides to transfer, they will create a transfer application using their same TE Easy application logon. Or if the student takes a leave of absence that is greater than 1 semester, or if the parent switches to a different TE employer, the student may need to create a new TE Easy application. But otherwise, the TE Easy application the student creates to initially apply for tuition exchange, that application stays with them throughout their educational career, barring those special exceptional circumstances I just mentioned, and they're not required to reapply each year. The student can create their TE Easy application account by going to tuitionexchange.org and clicking the TE Easy application green button at the top of that page. We're going to take a look at that and run through how to create the Easy application and how to apply for tuition exchange. So let's hop into the system. As I said, your student will want to go to tuitionexchange.org and click the green TE Easy application at the top of the page. That will take them to this instruction page that I recommend they read carefully before completing the Easy application. A very important section of the information here describes the different application statuses they may see their TE Easy application enter as they go through this process. Step 1, as I mentioned, is for the student to create a TE Easy application account. They can do so by clicking number 1 and going to the web address listed there. They'll then enter their personal email address to create their tuition exchange Easy application account. Once they enter their email address, they can click the Create Account button, and they will be prompted to enter their first name, their middle initial, their last name, their email address again, and again, very important that they carefully check to make sure they are entering the correct email address. If they enter the wrong email address and create the account under an incorrect email address, unfortunately, TE Central cannot update for them, nor can the tuition exchange liaison officer at their export school. So they might need to create a whole new account. So very important that they enter the correct email address the first time. They will then create a password that is at least 12 characters that must include an alpha, numeric, and special character, such as an exclamation point or question number, or question mark. They then will click this box, which indicates they agree to allow the export school, their parent's employer in most cases, and the import school, which would be the schools that they are listing on their tuition exchange application, that they agree to share the information from their TEEZ application with the parent listed on their application. So they will click that box and then click Create Account. Now, this email address may already be in use, so I might get an error message, and that's okay. We are going to simply go to step 2 and actually complete the TEEZ application. So I'm going to actually use a different email address, test account that I have, to log in. And normally after you create the account, it will take you right to the EZ application page. The first question that the student will be asked to complete is the application year. And that is very, very important. So if the student is applying for tuition exchange for the first time and seeking tuition exchange for fall of 2025 or spring of 2026, they would select the 2025-2026 year. At this point, it's really only students who are applying for maybe spring of 2025 to receive tuition exchange for that semester. Those are probably very rare cases right now, but if a student is seeking to transfer and receive tuition exchange for the spring of 2025, they would select the current 2024-2025 year, but the majority of students at this point are applying to receive tuition exchange for the first time for fall of 2025 or spring of 2026. So they should be selecting the 2025-2026 year. So we're going to go ahead and select that. And you'll see in the next section, we are being asked to provide the student's address. So we're going to enter that information here. You'll notice that any field that has an asterisk, such as address 1, is a required field, and it must be populated before the student will be able to submit their application. Be sure to click on the drop-down list for state. If you type it in, you will notice it will disappear later on. So it is best to select from the drop-down list. We'll enter our 5-digit zip code. You'll note that the 4-digit zip code is not a required field. Phone number is a required field. We'll enter that. Date of birth for the student is required. And then we come down to employee information. This is the information for the eligible school employee, which in many cases will be the student's parent, but not always. It may be that the employee is the same as the student seeking tuition exchange. And again, if that's the case, it is critical, as mentioned, that the student use a non-work email address when creating their TEEZ application account. Let's assume that we are applying for a first-year student who will be entering college as a freshman, and that I will be entering or selecting here as a student my parent's employer. So the student will be able to click the drop-down list, find their parent's employer, and select that institution. Very important. If for some reason when your student goes to select the parent's employer, that institution is grayed out, please make sure that they have entered all the information above that. If any required field is missing a value, they will not be able to select the parent's employer. If you have checked and still are unable to select an institution, it's grayed out in the list and all the information above is completed. As noted here, please have your parent reach out to the tuition exchange liaison officer at their institution, because it typically means the TLO has not entered some required information into the TILO system, or it could be that their application deadline for import student consideration has passed. So best to reach out to the TILO in those instances, and you can click here to find the school and the TILO's contact information. Thankfully, my parents' employer was in the list and I was able to select it. So now I'm going to enter the first and last name of my parent, and I'm going to enter their work email address that ends in .edu. That is very important. The majority of institutions require the employee to enter a .edu email address, or you will be unable to submit the application. In the event the institution is one of those rare institutions that does allow a parent to use a non.email edu email address, the student can list that non.edu email address there, but 99% of institutions require that the parent employee's email address be a .edu email address. The parent number of years of employment at that institution specifically should be listed there. And if that institution has an ID for their employees, the employee ID should be listed here. You'll note that's not a required field, as some institutions do not assign their employees an ID. In the next section under application information, this is where the student will indicate what their student classification or grade level will be for that first year that they'll be receiving tuition exchange. So again, that is very important that they enter the correct year that they will be in college, that first year they're receiving tuition exchange, because that actually determines the number of semesters of eligibility that they have for tuition exchange. So if your student will be a freshman and has never attended college full-time before, you should be selecting never attended college and first year undergraduate. I would still select that even if the student did take dual enrollment courses in high school, because they haven't attended college on a full-time basis yet. Any student who selects their first year student, they're going to be assigned 8 semesters of tuition exchange eligibility in the TILO, the tuition exchange liaison system. If they select that they're a second year student, the system will assign them 6 years of eligibility, 4 years if they select a third year student, 2 years of eligibility if they indicate they're a fourth year student. So it is important that they select the accurate grade level that they will be that first year that they're receiving tuition exchange. So I'm going to indicate here that the student will be a first year student who never attended college. In the next section, the student can list up to or select up to 20 colleges or universities they would like to apply for tuition exchange at. To do that, they simply click in the box and the list of schools will pop up. They can click again to add additional schools, click again and again, and fill up to a maximum of 20 how many schools they would like to be considered for tuition exchange at. However, it is important that they only list schools that the student plans to apply for admission at. If at any time the student, prior to them being enrolled at an institution, if at any time, let's say maybe a month or two later, they decide they're interested in another college or university, and they want to add that school to be considered for tuition exchange at, they can come back to their TE Easy application account, log in, and come down to the school list and update that information. If they've already listed 20 colleges, they will need to remove one from the list in order to add another one in that 20th slot. And when they do remove a college from the list, that does withdraw their TE Easy application at that institution. So it might be important for your student to really consider where they plan to apply for admission and what schools they are very serious about before they select the 20 schools for their tuition exchange easy application. Again, they can come back and make updates, but at no point can they ever have more than 20 active schools on their application. You'll notice the checkbox below that they agree to allow the export and import school to share their TE information with their parent is already checked off and can't be unchecked because they already agreed to that when they completed their TE Easy application account. They will be required to check off that they understand that they will not be considered for tuition exchange until they submit a complete admissions application to the schools that they have listed. But that's the final step. They can then click submit. And the following day, the export school, i.e., the parent's employer, will get an email notification that they have an export application awaiting their review. And they will need to go in and approve or deny the employee's dependent or spouse, and maybe even the employee themselves, approve the TE Easy application or deny it. And then once they do that, that will kick off a notification via email the following day to any of the import schools that the student has applied for tuition exchange at. The student and parent will not get an email notification, but the student can log back into their TE Easy application at any point in time and can look at the status of their applications. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of how the student creates a TE Easy application account and how they complete the TE Easy application itself. So just keep in mind that the Easy application is all about the student. For employer eligible questions, if the student or parent is unsure of what the student should enter on the application, it's a good idea for the parent employee to reach out to their HR office or to the TLO, the Tuition Exchange Liaison Officer. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, if the eligible employee leaves their place of employment, that institution, the export school, will cancel out or close out the student's TE Easy application. If the parent becomes reemployed at another TE member school, the student can log back into their existing TE Easy application account and create a new TE Easy application under the parent's new employer. Similarly, if the student at any point in time decides to transfer to another institution, they can log back into their existing TE Easy application account and click the Create Transfer App button to apply for TE at the school they plan to transfer to. For questions about any of the schools that a student has listed on their TE Easy application, for questions about any of those schools' processes or application deadlines, the student can go to tuitionexchange.org and click on the TE school list and select that school. But they can also reach out to their admissions counselor or to the TLO, the Tuition Exchange Liaison Officer at that school. Some questions that a student might want to ask in relation to tuition exchange is, what's the scholarship amount? Am I able to receive any additional institutional scholarships on top of tuition exchange? What if I receive a federal Pell Grant or a state grant? Will that offset the amount of my tuition exchange scholarship if I receive one, or can I receive those grants on top of or in addition to my tuition exchange scholarship? It's important to know what the scholarship renewal requirements are if the student receives tuition exchange. For example, are they required to maintain a certain GPA? Are there any requirements related to tuition exchange and housing? Are they required to live on campus if they receive a tuition exchange scholarship? And how many semesters of tuition exchange will the import school offer? For many schools, the standard is 8 semesters or 4 years as an undergraduate student, 2 years as a graduate student. Another question to ask, what if I decide to go part-time? Can I receive tuition exchange as a part-time student, or am I required to carry a full-time course load? And will tuition exchange cover a summer semester or a semester where I might study abroad? Are the number of credits that I take each semester on a tuition exchange scholarship capped? For example, can I only take 15 or 18 credits? What if I take an overload? Will the total amount of my credits be covered under the tuition exchange scholarship? So that does conclude our tuition exchange easy application process and review. I hope that information has been helpful. And if you have additional questions, again, always great to start with the TLO, the Tuition Exchange Liaison Officer at the export institution. But once you have questions about the specific selection process or timeline, at the school the student has applied for tuition exchange at, it is then great to reach out to the student's admissions counselor or to the tuition exchange liaison officer at the import schools. Have a great day and best of luck to all of you.